Is Trails in the Sky First Chapter Game of the Year material? I'll tell you why I think it is. Hey friends, it's Just the Gems. I'm Brandon. And you guys, I think I'm in love with my wife. Yeah, of course, sure, whatever. She's the light of my life. But also with the latest, oldest entry in the Trails series. Trails in the Sky First Chapter has been remade with more tender loving care than almost any game in history, and it's made the pitch to get newcomers into the Trails series so much easier to make. Thanks to Gung Ho for providing me with the review code. Let's get into exactly why I think Trails in the Sky First Chapter comes so close to that elusive artistic goal: perfection. It's probably pretty hard to be present on JRPG YouTube without learning at least a bit about the Trails series, even just by accident. But I'm going to give you a really quick rundown of the story and characters just in case you're brand new. No spoilers, this is set up in surface level only. Trails in the Sky takes place in the country of Liberl on the continent of Zemuria. This is a fantasy world that underwent some sort of horrible catastrophe 1200 years ago, but things have been pretty good lately, thanks for asking. In fact, they're in the middle of an enormous industrial and technological revolution due to the discovery of orbital technology. It's complicated, but essentially orbital technology uses these kinds of mystical stones found all over the world to create different effects. Some of those effects are basically magic spells, but others are more practical and everyday, like electricity. Using orbital technology, what once was essentially a more or less medieval world has been thrust into becoming a technological one, albeit one that's still early in the process of changing. That's all backdrop. What really matters for your experience are the characters of Estelle and Joshua. The game begins with a young Estelle waiting for her father to come home. When he does, he's carrying an unconscious boy about Estelle's age. He's Joshua, and the two eventually become sort of like adopted siblings. Joshua even takes their family name, Bright. As they grow up together, they become closer and closer friends, even deciding ultimately to go into the same line of work. The same line of work as their father as well, who is a bracer. Think work-for-hire bounty hunter, but in a real goody-good sort of way. They're super ethical. They're not like Dog the Bounty Hunter, not that sort of thing. The actual game kicks off with Estelle and Joshua's graduation from bracer training. Now they're able to take on jobs themselves, which range from monster extermination to wallet finding and everything conceivable in between. If you're a savvy JRPG player, you've probably already guessed that these sorts of missions are going to be the primary source of side quests in the game, and you're 100% right. This is one of the ways in which Trails in the Sky really succeeds narratively. Let me explain. Every JRPG has to have side quests, but not every JRPG integrates them so well conceptually into the storyline. It doesn't feel odd to see your characters running around and doing odd jobs for random people because that's literally their job. Now, of course, their job is pretty expansive and ends up covering all the major things they do that move the plot along as well. And that plot really kicks off when Estelle's father leaves on a mysterious mission. In fact, he leaves so suddenly and gives so little information that Estelle and Joshua are worried something's happened to him. At most, though, they're just a bit uneasy about it, because after all, he is revered as almost a god in this country. He's Cassius Bright, the Divine Blade, and pretty much everyone thinks he's the greatest person to ever exist. Except Estelle, who sees him at home and probably has to remind him to pick his dirty clothes up off the floor. Really knowing someone can definitely take the shine off him, that's for sure. But anyway, Estelle and Joshua want to become senior bracers, so they decide to travel all around the country on foot and work to get letters of recommendation from every bracer guild branch in the nation. Yes, this game called Trails in the Sky involves only a few brief airship experiences, but it's for the best. Traveling around the country is an incredible experience, and it would be a bummer if you essentially just bypassed it all by flying over it. Along the way, you team up with a variety of other people, both bracer and non-bracer. There's Sherazard, a former circus performer turned bracer who attacks with a whip, and despite her dangerous line of work is probably most likely to die one day from alcohol poisoning. There's Olivier, a traveling bard from the Erebonian Empire to the north, who is essentially a lecherous monster who flirts with anyone in possession of a pulse. Then there's Chloe, a rich girl who attends the Genis Royal Academy and happens to be best friends with a big bird. And then there's Agate, a hot-headed bracer with a shady background who's one of those types of guys who's super mean externally, but only because he really cares deep down. You know the kind. Then there's Tita, a 12-year-old engineering genius who happens to be the granddaughter of the father of the Orbital Revolution in Liberl, and who is definitely too young to be doing almost everything she does in this game. And finally, there's Jean, a former martial artist bracer whom everyone mistakes for a bear because of how freaking big he is, but in reality, he's a big softy in almost every way. and also a huge womanizer, but not in as gross a way as Olivier. The way the story in this game is told, Estelle and Joshua travel from major region to major region, and within each region, they'll meet new people and have new problems to deal with. This means you'll find characters joining and leaving and joining your party based on how the story's progressing. It might be a bummer to some people that you can't just form a party from your favorites and keep it that way, but I actually think it's great for two reasons. One, because to me, the story is most important, and if it doesn't make story sense for a character to go with Estelle and Joshua, it's better that they don't go with them. And two, because it gives you a chance to get to know each character individually before you can just throw them on the pile of other characters. Not just their personalities, but also their fighting styles. More on that later, but suffice to say that outside of the magic system, everyone has pretty unique combat abilities, and experimenting with all of them is a big part of the fun. All the major characters and a significant number of minor characters are voiced as well, and even though not every line is voiced, a common complaint among Trails fans for sure, the quality of the voice work is really exceptional. Just having voiced dialogue really goes a long way towards helping you connect with everyone, and I think without exception, each actor feels perfectly cast. Japanese fans have gotten to hear these lines for quite some time, given that the PlayStation Vita version of this game was fully voiced, but this is the first time we've had the privilege, and it's fantastic. Maybe you've heard that most of the first entries in a particular Trails arc tend to be slow burns, and that's basically still true here. But I guess it depends on how you're looking at it or what you're expecting from it. First chapter does a lot of legwork in establishing the nation of Liberl and the main characters, and the chapters of its story might feel somewhat disconnected from each other at first. I mean, after all, they take place in different regions of the country and typically involve new characters you haven't met before. But pay attention and you'll start to see the threads connecting them. And then by the time you're near the final chapter, you'll know how each of the seemingly disconnected stories actually join together, and it makes for a really cool experience as a player. This is a game that you absolutely should play for the story. In a bit, I'll be going on to tell you about why I think the graphics and the gameplay are also the best I've experienced this year, but Trails in the Sky is the very beginning of the most epic storyline in the history of video games. This is absolutely the place to jump on board with the rest of us if you haven't played Trails yet. If you have played Trails in the Sky, then this game will just make you feel so good. I can't tell you how many times I found myself just sitting here with a huge grin on my face because it feels incredible to be able to run around in this world I know so well and have it look this good. It's everything I wanted it to be and more, and if you're already a longtime fan, you're probably not even watching this because of course you're going to be playing this game. The original was already one of the finest JRPGs ever made, and this is that game, only better. It's crazy, but it's true. Right from the get-go, it's pretty clear that this is a huge step up from the PSP and PC original. I mean, the OG game came out 20 years ago, so it wouldn't be reasonable to expect it to hold up to today's standards, but that's exactly why this game is so stunning. To be perfectly honest, and I know this means I have to turn in my Trails fan card, but I've never been a huge fan of the graphic style of the original 5 games. I am a big fan of that 2D sprites on 3D backgrounds thing that was born with games like Xenogears, but the way the characters in Trails in the Sky looked just, I don't know. The sprites look a little too Playmobil to me, if that makes sense, kind of plasticky in a way. It's a small gripe, which is why I don't talk about it much. But the remake flips the script entirely. This is a flat-out gorgeous game, guys. It has an even more pure anime aesthetic than previous games in the series, and it layers on additional artistic touches like subtle lighting. Even in scenes where there aren't fancy real-time lighting effects, you can tell the artist took extra care to texture surfaces with realistic lighting, which makes scenes feel super lived in and real. The facial expressions are nuanced and sometimes hilarious too, which is a good trade-off from the old face portraits from the original game. Some people will argue those old portraits are better, but I don't think I agree. These faces combined with the voices and body animations go such a long way to making these feel more like real people than ever, now that the writing isn't having to do 100% of the work in creating the characters. The world feels so much more expansive, not just than the original, but more so than in any other Trails game. This is largely because of how you now seamlessly move from the overworld into towns and other areas without loading screens. It's not a true open world. Each of the major regions you visit, one in each chapter, definitely brings you to a loading screen initially, but after that, everything is just open. The exception here is going into buildings, something that was seamless in the Daybreak games but is now separated by a quick load. I played on PC with a freaking fast SSD, so my load times were blink and you missed it, but I can't speak for other systems. That's a small gripe. I got over it almost instantly. It is what it is. The artistry and technical prowess on display shows how far this team has come, and how far their tools have come too. Cutscenes have fluid animations, and even regular dialogue scenes feel far less static, with characters moving around and giving the events a more realistic foundation. This isn't going to be mistaken for some Unreal 5 hyper-realistic game, and if that's how you measure graphics, you'll probably think this is lacking. But if you rank graphics based on visual aesthetics and charm, this is one of the best looking games of the year. The music will be very familiar if you've played the original game. The tracks have all been beefed up and they sound better than ever, but they were always among the top tier video game music tracks, so not much needed to be done to them. You can choose from a few different variations of music tracks in the options too if you prefer the original sound or the sound from the Japan-only Evo versions released on the PlayStation Vita. Bottom line, this is an all-around gorgeous aesthetic package, and it's the finest presentation Falcom has ever put out. One thing I would always say when talking to series newcomers about how to get into Trails was that even though I think the battle system in Trails is the best in JRPGs, I can acknowledge that some people might find the combat in the first few games a bit slow and plodding. Even with the turbo mode turned on and everything running twice as fast as normal, it might not live up to everyone's modern day standards. As the series progressed, the system became more and more refined, to the point that modern Trails games are legitimately my favorite JRPGs to play. And Trails in the Sky First Chapter has the most up-to-date version of that battle system, meaning, and I say this without equivocation, this is the best modern JRPG battle system out there. Full stop. If you're coming into Trails brand new and you haven't sampled this system via the Daybreak games, let me just run it down real quick. You essentially have a choice to make with each encounter. Do you want to fight the enemies in real time via action combat? Do you want to instead jump straight into turn-based combat? Or do you want to weaken the enemy in action combat and then jump into turn-based with an advantage? This freedom of choice, this flexibility, it's frankly a freaking breath of fresh air in the JRPG space. It keeps field battles from becoming too repetitive by nature of allowing you the choice of how to engage every enemy. Your moveset in action mode differs based on which party member you're controlling, naturally. Olivier and Tita shoot from a distance, albeit with very different styles of gun. Agate swings a giant Cloud Strife-style sword around, or I guess guts, if you're into Berserk. Jean is all hand-to-hand, so he's about as close to the enemies as you can get. Chloe is a fencer, so she's stabbing and jabbing. Shara's got that long whip that she flings all over the place. Joshua's got twin blades, so he can pretty much turn himself into a blender. And of course, Estelle has the bow staff, which she swings with reckless abandon. There are a lot of styles to choose from, but like I mentioned earlier, you're not often blessed with having everyone in your party at one time, so you do have to play within the sandbox the game gives you at any moment. Still, and I don't think it's a spoiler to say, the end game provides you with full party customization, so you can put together a super team of your favorites then. Every character has a standard combo and the ability to dodge, but where Sky First Chapter mixes things up is with the addition of crafts. Normally, crafts are special attacks you can only use in turn-based battles, but now you can unleash a craft attack in action combat. They have the capacity to hit super hard, and they're rechargeable so you never have to worry about running out. You fill up your craft meter by attacking enemies, and performing a perfect dodge will fill it by 50% automatically. Now, in truth, would I hold this action combat system up to a game like East 10 Nordics, also from Falcom? No, not quite. It's a lot of fun, but there isn't the level of depth you'd see in a dedicated action RPG for sure. But thinking about the action combat as part of the overall battle system makes this setup feel much better. By attacking enemies in the field, you can eventually stun them. Activating turn-based mode while an enemy is stunned lets you unleash a follow-up attack from another character right away, which of course gives you an advantage. Turn-based combat is where the vast majority of the depth of gameplay is, and given that this series has been refining itself for 20 years, there's a lot of depth here. This is pure turn-based, no active time or anything like that. Along the left side of the screen, you'll see the turn order composed of your party and the enemies. On a character's turn, you can move them anywhere within their range of movement, and have them perform an action. Actions can range from a basic attack, to a craft, to an art, essentially magic spells. Basic attacks don't need much explanation, but let me just briefly touch on how arts and crafts work. Arts use EP, and they often take at least a little bit of time to cast. But the potential power in them often far exceeds other types of attacks, not to mention the plethora of healing and buffing spells you'll have access to. But EP is a limited resource, and the only way to restore it, outside of doing something like staying at an inn, is to use a pretty hard-to-come-by item, so you have to be strategic about when to cast spells. Crafts, on the other hand, use CP, and CP is a completely different ballgame. CP builds up automatically through play. Every time a character hits an enemy or takes a hit, they'll gain CP up to a maximum of 200. This is part of the genius behind the Trails battle system. It encourages you to mix up your playstyle throughout. Crafts and CP want you to play aggressively because doing so keeps your supply of CP flowing. Arts and EP need you to think carefully and consider conservation as part of your strategy. All that aside, positioning on the battlefield makes a big difference in how fights play out. A lot of crafts award you attack bonuses if you position yourself properly, like bonus damage if you hit an enemy from behind, for example. And some arts don't target a specific enemy, but instead target an area of the battlefield, meaning you need to think ahead, not just about where the enemy is, but where they're likely to be when the spell actually fires off. And that's saying nothing of the S-Crafts, special moves that you can launch when you have at least 100 CP in stock, and you can have a character jump in line and just unleash an incredibly powerful attack. It's awesome. If you're already a Trails fan, I'm sure a big part of why you fell in love with this series is the combat system. But for any newcomers, I hope this gives you at least a small idea of what to expect here from the combat basics. Sky First Chapter adds a few completely new elements to the battle system as well. Well, not new, exactly, but new for the Sky arc of Trails. If you score a critical hit on an enemy or manage to attack a particular weakness, you'll be able to have another character do a follow-up attack, something borrowed from the Cold Steel arc. You can build up these follow-up attacks as points and stock up to 5 at once. With 3 or more points, you can have 2 characters team up and wail on enemies together. If you use all 5 points at once, though, you'll be able to unleash a super powerful attack with every team member at once. A big part of especially late game strategy is finding ways to exploit enemy weaknesses in order to build your stockpile of points quickly, so you can get off multiple 5-point burst attacks in succession. Despite being turn-based, all this flash and fanfare really makes every battle feel intense and real. I never once got tired of fighting battles in this game. That's something I've almost never been able to say with a video game, and it's a testament to the amount of refinement Falcom have put into this series, and this game in particular. Seriously, my playthrough took me 47 hours, and I never got sick of it once. Are there awards for best designed combat systems in a video game? Because this game needs to win them. All of them. If you don't know me, hi, I'm Brandon. I talk about JRPGs a lot, and Trails especially. But if you do know me, you might know I'm a stickler for good localizations. Now, there's been a lot of debate over the years about what constitutes a good localization. Some of it in good faith, some of it not so much. And for whatever reason, there's a contingent of people who view my preferred style of localization as woke or inauthentic or even worse. But the reason I care so much about localization is because I truly want to have an experience that is as close as possible to the original Japanese players. Languages are extremely complicated, and especially for Japanese to English translations, there's almost no overlap or common ground to start from. They are about as different from each other as 2 languages can be. Not only the words, but how the words are used. Now, naturally, I'm not a localizer. I've never localized anything in my life. But I am a writer, a novelist, and I care deeply about good writing, especially in the media I enjoy. When I started Trails in the Sky First Chapter, I had a terrible, sinking feeling. It didn't feel like this game was particularly well localized. In fact, some of the writing was of the level of quality I hadn't seen since the original PlayStation era. However, that all changed after the first chapter of the game was complete. I don't understand it, and I'm deeply interested in what may have gone on behind the scenes, but from chapter 2 onward, the quality of the writing increased dramatically. Like, legitimately a night and day difference. Dialogue became so much more natural sounding, and characters were much more easily able to express pure emotion because the dialogue lent itself to being read aloud. I really want to go into more detail on this because, like I suggested, this game's localization is honestly fascinating to me. Never before have I seen that level of mid-game shift in quality. I really wish I knew what went on because I have to imagine it's interesting. But I'm going to do a separate video just for word nerds like me so I can talk more about that. For the purposes of this review, I'll say this. The only thing keeping me from saying this game is perfect is the first 8 or so hours of writing. After that, it's quite good. But I did have a few overall gripes that did stick around for the duration. For one, some names are pronounced incorrectly compared to the established canon. Liberal is pronounced as liberal, and that's the one you'll hear the most. Jean's name is pronounced Zin, which would be an easy mistake to make if it hadn't been spoken aloud in several other games up to this point. A few other minor ones cropped up along with some terms that ended up relocalized so they no longer match the rest of the series. Archaisms are now called Orbal Golems. Some of these issues strike me as being the result of maybe someone in charge not caring enough to be thorough in their research, unfortunately. That's just a theory, but I don't know what else it could be. Otherwise, I don't know how things like this would have slipped through. I have to imagine at least some of the voice actors mentioned something about the pronunciation of these things in the booth, given that they've all been playing these characters for quite some time. But at the end of the day, of course, they're just there to do a job, and it's not on them to question or push back on things like that. I'm hopeful that maybe these things could be corrected via a patch. Assuming that Sky's second chapter happens, maybe they could redo some of those voice lines while they've already got the actors in the booth. It's not a huge deal, it didn't ruin my enjoyment of the game, but it is worth noting for hardcore fans. This is it, guys. This is the place where I think everyone should begin with Trails. It's been a long time coming. In fact, I don't think I ever really expected it to happen, honestly. But this is the full quality Trails experience. No corners were cut. This isn't one of those quick and easy remasters we've gotten used to seeing in the JRPG space. This is a masterpiece. It's my game of the year. It nails basically everything it sets out to do, and it does by far the best job of making the case for the Trails series as a whole. If you play this game and you don't fall in love with the characters and the world and the gameplay, then I would say that just means it's not for you, and that's fine. But this is the purest, most unadulterated Trails experience you can have right now, and I'm honestly pretty jealous of the people who are going to start their Trails journey here with this game. What a way to begin. Anyway, that's all. Have you played Sky First Chapter yet? Let me know what you think down in the comments. Thanks again to Gung Ho for the code, and thanks to all of you for watching. If you wouldn't mind, would you consider liking and subscribing if you're not already? The day I'm filming this is my birthday. So if you're watching it the day it comes out, it's the day after my birthday. So if you want to wish me a happy belated birthday, a subscription would be fantastic. Oh, and over on the latest episode of my podcast, the JRPG Pursuit, we interviewed George Peter, the voice actor behind Colonel Alan Richard from Trails in the Sky First Chapter. So go check that out and subscribe, both to us and to him. He streams on Twitch and he's fantastic. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, bye.